evening and welcome to the regular City Council study session for Monday, October 22nd, 2018. We have a number of presentations and staff reports this evening, but I am going to begin by recognizing our scouts who are with us this evening. Councilman Robertson, if you wouldn't.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, let me just first of all say welcome to one of our City Council study sessions. This is not one of our regular meetings, but we're so happy to have you here with us, and I understand you're working on citizenship in the community, merit badge, and perhaps a communication. You want to stand? This is Troop 229 from First Christian Church, so we're very pleased to have you attend tonight. There's a lot of interesting topics that'll be on our discussions, so we're pleased to have you here and be happy to visit with you afterwards. Thanks for coming.
Thank you for being here. Mr. City Manager, before we proceed, we have a new face with us this evening, so why don't you go ahead and make their introductions.
Sure. Madam Mayor, members of the council, as I let you know a couple meetings ago, our long-serving city attorney, Dayla Bishop Schwartz, has since retired. During this interim process, I've decided to retain the services of Shannon Marcano. Shannon represents a number of cities across the Kansas City metropolitan area on both sides of the state line, but Shannon will be with us in whatever time period it takes to find our permanent fill-in for this position, and look forward to working with her and with the council during that interim period.
Okay, welcome, Shannon. Thank you. Okay, we will begin with our Kansas City Library, Public Library levy presentation. Mr. City Manager.
Yes, Madam Mayor, members of the council, coming up here in just 15 short days, we've got a number of issues on the ballot, one of which, and portions of Independence, which fall within the Kansas City Public Library District, is a measure supporting that institution. And as part of our strategic plan, Independence for All, we really are committed to strengthening our relationships with all of our civic partners. So tonight, asked representation to come forward and give the council and the community a little bit of an update on what this measure is. So I will turn it over to Ms. Dominic.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Madam Mayor, council members, thank you. I'm Laura Dominic. As the Independence representative on the Kansas City Board of Trustees, just want to give you a quick update. As Zach mentioned, the levy that we have on the ballot on November 6th. As most of you know, all of the residents in the 64053 zip code are served by the Kansas City Public Library, and most of us in the 64052 are as well. Though library card holders have access to all 10 of our branches and all of our digital media, we're primarily served by the Trails West branch at 23rd, just east of Sterling. We are asking the voters to authorize an 8-cent increase in the property tax levy to maintain and modernize our facilities and sustain and enhance essential services, including programs to specifically enhance children's and youth literacy, help seniors stay independent, and to advance computer access and literacy. The Kansas City Public Library loses approximately $3 million annually to TIFs and other tax abatements, coupled with the fact that the levy funds have grown less than 1% annually over the past decade. Our revenue is not enough to keep pace with the rising needs of the residents. So for the first time in 22 years, the library is asking for an increase to the property tax levy. If passed, the levy increase is expected to generate approximately $2.8 million in annual revenue. We appreciate your support at the public library, and if there's any questions.
Thank you. Are there any comments or questions? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
I do want to clarify, because I've had this question a couple times from some of my neighbors. They're like, didn't we just vote on the library? That was the Mid-Continent Public Library system that most Independence residents and most residents of Eastern Jackson County did vote on that levy increase, and it was very, very successful. So similar to your other taxing jurisdictions, you're in one or the other, and so there's a smaller portion of independents, including myself, who are in the Kansas City Library District. So this is not a duplicate, and by any means there are two library districts. So I just wanted to clarify that as well. So thank you. Our next presentation is Communities for All Ages, Community of Cottages. Mr. City Manager.
Yes, Madam Mayor, members of the council, contained within our Independence for All strategic plan really is a focus on making sure there's adequate housing of all types and styles in this community. And recently had the pleasure of being introduced to Ms. Becky Miles by Councilmember Huff, who's been working with our partner, Truman Heartland Community Foundation, among others, and was really a unique and diverse approach to addressing a segment of housing needs within our community. So tonight we wanted to get this on the council's radar for informational purposes, let you know about some of the initiatives that are out there. I think there's a number of folks, I know Ms. Miles is here, but any of the folks associated with this presentation that want to come up, I think we've got quite a few.
Thank you.
This project, I want to thank, first of all, Zach Walker and Mike Huff for hearing me out on this, and especially me torturing Mike Huff to hear me out on this repeatedly. I'm persistent and tenacious, and I don't give up. So this project, along with Steve Gunther, who is the architect on the project, was given birth to development about 18 months ago. I don't know where the little button, here we go. So the community of cottages idea is proposed to be a limited equity, nonprofit cooperative for older adults. One reason being that there's considerable funding available in that category. The other is self-governance, so that the seniors would have a part of governing their own residence. Certainly some other advantages, the low-income tax credit, and many other features that a shared and common cooperative, one of the most successful cooperatives in the state of Missouri is Independence Commons, down at Lee Summit Road and Truman Road, which has been successful for many years. It's also possible to keep the rents low, as they have successfully done there. So we'll see if I can do this right. The project's mission statement, without going into too much detail, is to provide a meaningful and purposeful living community for seniors that empowers them to socialize, work, thrive, and impart their acquired life experience and wisdom to the larger community by engaging with all generations through multiple ways of connectivity and involvement. That's a lot of words, but it's meaningful. Again, not going into a whole lot of detail about the advantages of a limited equity nonprofit cooperative is that you have one single mortgage, and that mortgage would be very low. It helps define the costs as very low throughout the term of the project. PMI insurance is actually returned to the project so that it contains monies for the maintenance and all those kinds of things. In addition, as if it's a cooperative, there's down payment assistance available through the Home Project and Home Program in Missouri for down payment assistance. The project we're going to look at, there are 8 such projects that have been developed in the state of Washington around the Seattle area. The cottage is what they call it. Blue Springs has improvised their ordinances, and they call them courtyard housing, and so that might have to be done. And this is the man to talk to about how that happens, not myself. We are proposing a minimum of 50 because it would require that many houses to be a successful cooperative, of somewhere between 680 and 990 square feet in one bedroom with den, and 2-bedroom units. As you can see, the open floor plan there, it's about mobility, accessibility, to make that 690 or 990 square feet feel very, very large. And Steve can tell you it is very large. Solar powered, minimizing again, electricity costs, and that feeling of home ownership, plus the shared expenses through maintenance and all those things. The project design, at least from the ones that have been studied, make sure I'm on the same page. All of the cottages face a common area to create a culture of inclusiveness. So you don't see any garages like you do all the way when you drive down any other street. All you see first is the garage. The other thing is, if you'll notice this, when you enter the porch from the side, which makes that porch an actual outside room for socializing as opposed to go straight up through the center. The houses are nested, and by nesting, they're really close together, so you can put 2 houses on one lot. And universal design principles, which are a part of the book that Steve Gunther authored with communities of all ages, is definitely a part of all of this construction. The part that intrigues most people about the project, however, is the connectivity piece, which is a web-based web page, and it's an app that can be on a phone, believe it or not, for any senior running around with a phone. And all of these things in addition to the face-to-face connectivity, it allows this community to reach out to the larger community, as well as the larger community to reach into this community. It's kind of an old term is hub and spoke, but if this would be the hub, then the application of this website would be to engage other seniors from outside this community to be a part of the activities going on in this community, if that makes sense. On the web page, it would also allow employment and volunteer opportunities could be posted from the city, from organizations, from businesses on the website, so that seniors could take advantage of employment opportunities as well as volunteer opportunities. You know, when you're together as a group, it's a lot easier to go volunteer. If you've got 2 or 3 friends and 4 of us want to go do Lead to Read over at Sycamore Hills Elementary School, than it is for myself to reach out individually to do that. And so again, that inclusiveness and that connectivity piece of it, it enables a lot of things that don't happen when a senior is isolated, even though they may have all the desire in the world to do that. The other opportunity is that lots of seniors have experience of their own, where they've done all kinds of special things, CPAs, tax accounting, alterations, I mean, the list goes on, administrative tasks. And those citizens may want to offer those in the residency, may want to offer those outside the community or to those within the community. But especially the big opportunity is for tutoring, all the way up through high school. If a guy smart like Steve can offer them construction trade information and give them a leg up on what their future might be and tutor them and that kind of thing, if it's made available through the connective piece of the internet, it could be doable. Another big idea, huge, is meals and nutrition. We know that 16% of all seniors are living in poverty. We know that 30% of all seniors, this is an overall figure, are in fear of food insecurity, and that has a lot to do with income. A lot of it has to do with being alone. And so the ability to purchase group meals. Hy-Vee has a wonderful registered dietitian. They offer meals that they put together that are heart-friendly, that are diabetic-friendly meals. They cost roughly $12.99 for a 2-person pack. You can't go to McDonald's or to Wendy's for that. If we ordered as a group, those prices could probably also be reduced. And there's also such things as Home Chef and HelloFresh, not to mention ordering bulk products from Costco and Sam's Club. The meals and nutrition could also be done in a congregate meal program. And that's, again, not just within the community, but it's inviting outside communities from the village to village people to come in and do that. We really know that the quality of life is impacted seriously by the way that people eat, and that the older that you get, you don't eat very well, so eating together well is a big benefit. Transportation is another issue. They now have silver rides in Kansas City. Those silver rides can come and pick a group up and take them places. There's, as we know, Ride Kansas City, and there's vetted Ubers who would come and pick a regular group up to go to bingo at St. Mark's or wherever they wanted to go on a regular basis, especially at those nighttime occasions when that's difficult. Socialization and entertainment, again, allows for seniors to do things together. It also allows for kids to come in and do things with seniors that maybe they hadn't done in the past. We'll see community gardens coming up here in a little bit, but card playing and travel arrangements, social opportunities, clubs, all of those, and especially, again, reaching out beyond the community in a village-to-village concept to allow other seniors to come in and do that. Somewhat of a hub for a Palmer Center, but even more expansive than that. Health and wellness, another huge issue. This property is proposed to have a senior playground. A senior playground, even swinging is a good physical activity. And also, I have grandchildren, and I'd love to play on a playground with a senior playground, and that would cultivate that sense of belonging and community spirit. Also, silver sneakers. The big deal is we know that the WAVE, and Stephen's going to address us going to KU, that the WAVE is soon not to be having to go to the doctor. So in the wellness part, the website might allow the interface with a nurse practitioner. So you could do blood pressure checks, so you could do diabetic checks and those kinds of things via the website. Lastly, just another example of a community garden that might be shared with children if they had an interest in helping grow things, you know. This is a small-scale one, so it allows waist-high gardening for a senior, but it could also invite children to do the same. So I'm going to turn that over to Steve, and he's going to give you a little bit of information about our experience with Katy School of Architecture, his alma mater, and what happened when we went there.
Hi, good evening, everyone. My involvement with this is mutual friend of ours told Becky that she knew somebody that would help with this project. And so I met with Becky, and I really looked at what she was trying to do, and I tried to engage that with some of the things that we've been involved with Mid-America Regional Council on the Community for All Ages, and also with the Truman Heartland Foundation on the Community for All Ages. I've worked with both of those groups, and as she had mentioned previously, helped to not co-author, but there were several authors and contributors to the handbooks that Mid-America Regional Council put out in regards to how to fundamentally design and do minimal things to your existing residences to make them safe for yourselves and for maybe senior parents that you might have had and so forth. So my involvement with that has been a very rewarding experience, but it also has led me to understanding the need for a huge connectivity part for seniors to be part of the community still. A lot of times they're looked at as just being kind of sent to one area and, you know, in a nursing home or something like that, and that's the one thing that we don't want to do. We want them connected to services and to the things that maybe independents might have to offer them. And so that's going to be one of the big things that we're going to be looking at as far as land and opportunities for that land to be connected to, you know, for all the bus, you know, connections and stuff like that that could be available. But my experience is I've been an architect for 35 years. I've done work here in Independence. Most of our work's been in the Lee Summit and various other areas around the community. My biggest experience that I've got is in multifamily, residential, and condos and stuff like that. So my background really facilitates working in smaller numbers, square footages to make things work. And one of the big things that we worked on at Mid-America Regional Council was just that. How do we make a small space feel enlarged? And we were also given the opportunity to meet with the University of Kansas design students for almost a year and propose with them a project for them to study even some of the areas that could be relatable to what they're learning and what our needs could be. So that was a very involved process and took a lot of time, but I mean, I think the students hit on a lot of the great ideas that we'd like to try to incorporate also. And so we're looking forward to the possibility of working with you all and on a project in your community to where not only seniors but citizens of all ages can be housed in an area where there's no barriers and there's a safety that is established in reduced corners and wider hallways, anything that would have to do with good practical universal design. You know, it's a term that's been pushed around a lot on universal design, but to me as an architect it's just good common sense design. And so that's what we're going to be doing. So, and we'll entertain any questions that y'all might have.
Okay, thanks so much for coming. Any comments or questions?
Yes, Madam Mayor. I'd like to see I'd like to move that we allow the city manager to investigate this a little bit further and get back with us on it.
Yeah, so I have a question, and I don't know if this is for you, Councilman, or for the city manager. I mean, it's a fabulously designed and programmed space. I mean, it looks terrific, and there's, you know, we can certainly see all the benefits of this type of a community. So what, you know, precisely would, are we seeking here? Is it a particular zoning change or a zoning something that would allow for this type of development in certain areas of town?
It's really multifaceted. If the
Yeah.
council will recall last week, adoption of the resolution to support our application to the Mid-America Regional Council Community for All Ages Initiative, the
Right.
silver and gold status. So contained within that is a multiplicity of different initiatives of zoning regulations, of transportation options, of really a holistic approach to how we provide basic city services to our aging population.
Okay, and then we would work to identify a development partner for this, and, you know, I mean, it's wonderful. I mean, it's like a retirement community outside. I mean, it's, you know, that's sort of how it looks. And, you know, I can think of other communities that maybe aren't for seniors, but, you know, that mimic that kind of a design. I mean, even Newtown at Harmony has some of that same feel of compact and close together and a lot of community assets. So is that sort of where we're heading, is to identify what type of zoning changes or allowable uses that we might have to make amendments to, and then actively seek out a development partner?
Correct. And along with that, obviously suitable locations that we want to see this type of development take off in.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other comments or questions?
So is this a not-for-profit that wants to come here and do this? It says not-for-profit.
Yes, yes, it is.
And so they would actually set up the community, and you would help do the
Right. I
design
mean,
work, the rezoning would have to be done.
Right, I mean, at the first part would be, what we're trying to do here is just establish the desire to actually work with the City of Independence on establishing maybe a couple areas where this might work, look at the zoning and the connectivities of the two or three areas and how they might lay out for the design, and then move forward from there to finding a development partner, and then obviously working with the city as far as if there's zoning changes that need to be done or plan development, something like that. So, and then
Okay.
whatever code issues might come up as far as the actual design and layout work. So.
Thanks.
Any other comments or questions?
I do, Madam Mayor. So what's your ideal minimum acreage or size that you look for to make this viable?
Well, Becky was saying that to make it viable, she's done the work and established around 50 units, and at about 5 units per acre, that's pretty small density. Okay. So we're looking at somewhere between, I'm going to say 8 and 15 acres maybe, depending on how the land might lay out and so forth like that. I mean, obviously you get a more hilly piece of ground, you got more things to contend with than a
Sure.
flatter piece. But yeah, I mean, and then the other thing we'd like to look at is the potential for future development, so that if there's additional acreage close by or even maybe connected to the same parcel, that'd be something that would be a good,
Sure.
good avenue too.
All right, thank you.
Okay.
So what I am thinking is we have our council strategic planning session coming up next month. This would be a great topic to add to the agenda for that and get some council discussion on how to pursue this. The zoning seems easy. I mean, frankly, I mean, making the zoning available. But maybe we could add that to the agenda for that meeting and add this to our work plan for the 2018-2019 year. Okay.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, our next presentation is the semi-annual report of the Public Safety Sales Tax Oversight Committee. Mr. City Manager.
Yes, Madam Mayor, members of the council, a few meetings ago we had the opportunity to hear from our sales tax committee reports. This is the conclusion of that with the semi-annual report of the Public Safety Sales Tax Committee, and member Ron Hickey is here to give that presentation.
Okay, thank you.
As a member of the aging community,
Just pull your microphone down a bit.
As a member of the aging community, I was delighted to hear what the previous presentation had to say.
You're ready to move in, huh?
Madam Mayor, council members, I'm Ron Hickey. I'm a committeeman on the Public Safety Sales Tax Oversight Committee. Our chair, Chris Rohrs, is recovering from surgery and unable to be here, so I drew the short straw. So other members of the committee may be seated in the chamber. I didn't see anybody else, but they may be. We'd like to thank you for the opportunity to be of service both to you and the citizens of Independence. We've been provided with detailed financial statements from fire, police, and finance departments that show current revenues and expenditures, as well as expected revenue and what it's projected to be used for. The following is a brief report of our findings and conclusions. As of June 30th, 2018, the 2017-2018 fiscal year PSST revenues for the police department have been $2,048,646. The July and August revenue figures were not available because the city has not yet closed them, closed those periods out. The expenditures for the police department during the 2017-2018 fiscal year totaled $2,410,693. The July and August police expenditures totaled $77,057. Some of those expenditures for the 2017-2018 include, but are not limited to, communications costs such as software maintenance and administration fees, radio tower utility costs, broadband, MFT, air cards, and portable radio parts and supplies, equipment such as officer uniforms, vehicles, fuel and maintenance, body armor, MDTs, and M-car cameras, facilities, which is mostly accounted for in the new communication center capital project. Further, they have encumbered funds of approximately $483,071 for the following large purchases, which includes but are not limited to new vehicles, the equipment needed for the new vehicles, and the cost to install that equipment, stop sticks, conversion from uniform crime reporting to incident-based crime reporting, encryption upgrade for ComCenter radios, flashback HD in-car video systems, Data 911 M8 mobile data terminals, Opticon emitters, and tactical vests. The following information relates to the fire department portion of the sales tax as of June 30th, 2018. Actual year-to-date revenue for the fiscal year 2017-2018 was $2,139,782. Actual expenditures for that same time period was $2,014,108. The major projects completed in the last fiscal quarter of 2017-2018 totaled $261,708 and included but not limited to personal fire protection gear, replacement of high-vac unit at stage 4, new pumper outfitting, iPad, mobile data terminals, computer replacements, CAD system upgrades, external training, replacement of treadmills, replacement of flooring at Station 6, and wellness program. Major projects budgeted for the 2018-2019 fiscal year total approximately $1,448,000, which includes but not limited to personal protection equipment replacement, fire nozzle replacement, EMS equipment, fire hose replacement, wellness equipment, fire station driveway replacement, computer equipment, mobile data terminals, software, aerial apparatus lease, new aerial apparatus down payment, mobile EOC command unit, extraction tools, personal protection equipment, washers and extractors, and self-contained breathing apparatus replacement. After review, questions, and discussion, the committee has determined that the revenue generated from the PSST has been spent appropriately and in accordance with the PSST guidelines. This concludes my report, and I'll now be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. You did a fine job.
Thank you.
Are there any comments or questions from the council? Okay. Thank you very much. We appreciate all
You're
your
welcome.
work.
Thank you.
Our next presentation is the police department's new streets crimes unit. Mr. City Manager.
Yes, Madam Mayor, members of the council, one of the obviously major initiatives in Independence for All is our goal of quality, and particularly those around perceptions of public safety. So in this past year's budget, we took the council's feedback, worked very diligently to provide adequate funding to add 5 new officers and convert a civilian position to a sergeant for what we are calling our street crimes unit. So as this is a major initiative and a major commitment towards adding to our robust public safety and police department, we wanted to provide the council with a quick update on this tonight about the scope and the breadth and depth of this new unit. So Major John Cato's here tonight to provide the council with that update.
Thank you for having me, Mayor and Council, and of course City Manager. I can't say enough about how much we appreciate your confidence and this progress in starting this new unit. You know, success is always so often about having the right tool for the right job at the right time. And for, I think, speaking for all those folks sitting over there, this has been something that we have identified and thought about for some time. Late last year, back in September, we started to proactively work together utilizing our career criminal unit, drug unit, to try to problem solve and target those areas of persistent problems, whether those be specific persons, repeat offenders, core offenders, or whether those be problem addresses where the problems of drugs or neighborhood problems always seem to circulate around those same areas over and over, and persons that we were having to arrest and rearrest over and over. We started to put together a lot of pieces at that time in conjunction with using our crime analyst unit to proactively go after these hotspot areas using some real-time analytics and some pertinent data. But we have always been missing the piece of designated personnel that were able to target those specific problems without having their other peripheral duties that prior to that had been their primary duties, whether that be drug investigations, whether it be SWAT's typical activities they do day to day. We were having to rob oftentimes from Peter to pay Paul to get the personnel we needed to concentrate on problems. So that's just why this is such a proactive thing that's so exciting for us to actually have the right tool for the right job. As the city manager mentioned, when this was discussed and we were notified that we were getting these 5 positions, we did a little internal realignment, and what this will comprise of is a sergeant and 7 detectives. We borrowed some personnel from existing vacancies in the career criminal unit and DEU. One of those bodies will go to supplement community services that may be discussed later. But these 7 detectives and a sergeant, we feel, will give us the proactivity and the needed response to these persistent problems that occur over and over, and something that we can allocate a proper resource to get lasting results rather than just constantly displacing the problem somewhere else. Personnel, like I alluded to, the right people for the right job is important. Back in August, we selected Sergeant Justin English to supervise the street crimes unit. Justin has some unique tools and skills through years of experience and training that I think is going to serve this unit well. His investigative or detective experience from the past includes drug task force experience, involvement with our career criminal unit, and juvenile investigations. He also has prior service with another metro department in a street crimes type unit prior to him being hired by Independence, which I think gives him a vast advantage and a leg up on hitting the ground running on a unit like this. He's also a former SWAT operator and sniper and an instructor for SWAT tactics previously to his coming to Independence. So I think he brings a lot of the tools already with him that help make this unit a success. Justin, I'll ask you to stand up. We're excited to have him. Justin tonight, we don't have a drone, but Justin's my prop. He's wearing tonight kind of a prototype we're styling for this unit to make them easily and readily identifiable in their proactive activity. So he's kind of doing a little T&E for us tonight, so we can get a look at what that looks like. Thanks, Justin.
Thank you.
Just as important are the members of the unit, I think, that bring some unique skills, experience, and a bag of tools with them to make this a success. There was a lot of excitement about this unit. We had 20 applicants internally for this new unit, which for us is a lot. There was a lot of excitement. There's a lot of looking forward to the good things this unit can bring. So I think those 20 applicants and all of them were fine applicants that bring a lot of unique skills. But 5 of the 7 we have tonight, I'll let you stand up when I introduce you. We got Rob Romey, Michelle Sumstead, Luis Virgil, Kyle Jarnigan back in the back, and Mark Showman. Now you can sit down. They love doing this kind of stuff. Each of them, investigative skill, community services, problem solving, SWAT, detective, there's a real neat conglomeration of various skills over decades of service there that I think are to bring us a lot of things, including problem solving, utilizing and bringing in other city departments with this unit to solve problems that may not be strictly crime related but community related. I think they're going to bring a lot of the skills and the tools that we need to be able to hit the ground running to do this. Street Crimes Unit is going to be under the Criminal Investigations Division, which I'm the major of. The reason for that placement is because it puts them in the right spot, the perfect spot to be interrelated with all the other units on the department. Our analyst unit, patrol, investigations, property crimes, people crimes, it puts them in a unique spot there to be able to interact with all these other units. They are going to be primarily a field unit, but when they are in the building, we've designated and identified space for them down on the ground floor where the previous dispatch center was. That puts them in close proximity all the time to patrol, so they'll get more of a real-time feel for what's happening all the time out in the field, on the street, which I think plugs them in that much closer to what's happening on a day-to-day basis for the delineation, the decision about their duties for that day. We realize that some of those duties may be ongoing to address a given problem. Some of them are going to be hotspot driven or short-term driven. That means the focus changes today and goes to this. But I think it's going to give us a viable and active and proactive tool that I think the citizens of Independence are going to see some pretty serious impact from in a short amount of time. Their schedule will be 2 weeks on days, 2 weeks on evenings. Because we all know those issues that relate to quality of life and crime don't always happen at night, and they don't always happen during the day. So there's going to be some fluidity there of them adjusting their schedule to meet problems as they arise, and where there may be some adjustment in scheduling to go along with that. We're hopeful. December is the target for operational status for the unit. The thing we're waiting on right now are our current trainees that are in the FTO program. They're slated to be out and ready for service by December, which will allow us to pull these guys from their current assignments to staff the unit. So that's the target right now, is December. So any questions?
Thank you. Comments or questions from the council? Okay. Yes.
This is wonderful to see. I had long talks before this when we were understaffed. We wanted to get this unit, and we've had the progress to do it now because of our hires. And I'd like to thank, the city manager and the staff and this council for coming along with getting the extra officers we need so that these people, and putting it in the wheelhouse so that these people who are coming up, and I know that we've talked long and hard about keeping Independence people in the and we've been successful there too. But this is the result of those talks and that we have done for several months and last year. And thank you, city manager, and thank you for bringing this forward and protecting the city.
Well, much appreciated.
Any other comments or questions? This, we've put together a great team. I think I know
A lot of these
almost
faces
everybody.
are probably known to a lot of you.
Yeah, who've really been, I think some of them are more visible officers out in the community for a number of years, and ones that our community knows well, I believe. I would just echo what Councilman Van Camp said. This came about as a direct result of what we're hearing from our community, what this council hears from our community, and I know what our officers and other frontline employees hear from the community is it's these types of crimes that are most frustrating, not only to our police department, but certainly to our business owners and to our citizens. So I also want to give credit to our city manager for listening to the priority of this council and finding a way to get this funded in this year's budget. And we know, as you said, we hope that this will make a big impact in a short amount of time. We know that it probably isn't enough to do everything that we expect to be able to do in this community, but it's a great start, and we're really eager to see it get underway and continue to have this dialogue, learn what's working, what's not working,
Right.
what additional resources we need to provide to really get after these types of issues that tend to frustrate our community. So thank you very much. Yes. Councilman.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. It's been really nice since our last budget discussion. Now I was able to go out to different community meetings and neighborhood meetings, and the number one discussion is the crime, and you know all the stories that go along with that, and be able to explain to them, we have it in the budget, there's units coming, we're this is something new, we're taking our time, we're developing it, we're molding it to take care of the needs. So it's been really nice to be able to get out there and say that this is coming, be patient. I've been building it up some, so I hope I haven't oversold it. So big expectations, and thank you for taking it on. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Yes.
One
Go
more
ahead.
thing. The manpower is great, but also the equipment, and that's what we've worked hard on to maintain. And just as we've seen from the finance report, we're giving it the full. If there's anything you need, please let us know.
Will do. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next is not to be overshadowed, the police department drone program. Mr. City Manager.
Yes, Madam Mayor, members of the council. As Major Cato said, resources, right resources for the job are important, and sometimes that's personnel, but sometimes that's leveraging advancements in technology. So tonight we are continuing our theme here of addressing perceptions of safety in our city, and Sergeant Seth Bosch, who is going to be oversighting our new drone program in the police department, also first base coach of the league champion Queen City Royals, is here to give us a presentation.
That's right. Thank you. My name's Seth Bosch, Sergeant with Independence, and I'm really proud of this program, and we're currently in the process of developing our first drone unit. Law enforcement agencies around the country have been using them. They're also known as unmanned aircraft systems. They can be deployed in multiple situations, including but not limited to locating endangered persons, including missing children and adults with cognitive impairments, traffic control, search warrant executions, tactical situations, criminal surveillance, mapping crime scenes, and traffic accident sites. Law enforcement agencies have discovered that a drone can increase operational efficiency and improve officer and community safety. On the subject of drones, the Carolina Public Press quoted the Fayetteville, North Carolina Police Chief Gina Hawkins, who said, "One pilot and observer can search an area with the drone quicker than 20 officers on foot." When it comes to search and rescue missions, seconds can mean lives or life or death, and rescue teams cannot afford mistakes. Drones can cover a large section of land in a short amount of time and can easily spot a person when equipped with thermal cameras even at night. This is just one of many examples on how we can protect the community. Police drones can help agencies gather essential information in dangerous situations while saving lives, manpower, and money. Traffic crash scenes and large crime scenes can be mapped much quickly than before and can greatly reduce the amount of time roads need to be shut down. Less personnel is needed to be dedicated to a single area search, keeping more officers in their patrol districts to handle other citizens' needs. On several occasions, IPD has had to reach out to other agencies with drones and request their assistance in these areas. Having access to our own equipment and using our own personnel will allow us to act more quickly and efficiently. The department has already purchased 2 drones. One of the drones is equipped with a thermal camera to use at night or in heavily wooded areas or rough terrain. The Federal Aviation Administration has issued the Independence Police Department a certificate of authorization, and individual officers will be required to obtain the FAA Part 107 remote pilot license. Officers and detectives belonging to this unit would still be primarily assigned to their full-time positions, but will be called out for special situations requiring a drone. The creation of the drone unit is expected to improve emergency response, expedite crime scene investigations, and increase citizen safety and officer safety. IPD is in the process of developing policies and procedures for police drone operations and use to ensure that the drone pilots are compliant with standard operational practices and state and federal laws. We currently are in the Metro working group with other law enforcement agencies collaborating on best practices for drone operations. IPD purchased the drones and their accompanying equipment using federal law enforcement forfeiture funds. The big one here is called the Matrice 210. That's one that'll hold the thermal camera. And then the smaller one is a Mavic Pro, and it might be small, but it's pretty effective. And
So you're going to demonstrate it?
we can do that outside.
I was starting to get nervous. Awesome, thanks.
I'll be glad to show you anytime.
Okay, thanks. Other comment? All right, I'm sorry, you've finished with your presentation. Okay, are there other comments or questions from the council? Okay, again, you know, yeah, go ahead.
This has been dear and near to my heart. I've been working hard with the majors about this and the police chief. This is just the tip of the iceberg because the drones are one thing, the certifications are another.
That's
and
right.
We've been working on that since a long time. And
Yeah.
I know you're tired of hearing from me, but every other week I'm coming in about the drone. And we have a contract and with the provider that has all those specifications in case it was there that we as a city are going to provide, but you're going to get the certifications that you need.
Correct. We've
And-
already received the COA from FAA.
Right. It goes way beyond, and you know, you're never up with technology. And these things in other cities are very big, and we're going to be there with them. I guarantee you. Thank you.
Madam Mayor.
Yes.
So with this technology that we're beginning to use on a more full-time basis, how are we going to, I guess, direct this to the city manager? How will we inform our citizens that we're going to implement this new technology without raising serious concerns, and who will we direct those questions to? I thought I saw John Simon. Oh, good. You may get some questions on this one.
He's issuing a press release. I don't know if he's done that yet or not. but-
Perfect.
Yeah, so there's a couple things, council member. Take heed, I saw the interim city attorney write the word drone policy down over here,
Oh,
so.
good. Good.
I know Mayor Weir and Mayor Pro Tem Van Camp both serve on the MARC Board of Directors, and, you know, last week we adopted the shared services resolution with Mid-America Regional Council. They have been taking a hard look at uniform policies for the entire metropolitan region and how this is deployed, both from a public safety angle, but really into some of the other areas of local government services that this could potentially be used for. So it's an awareness issue. It's continuing to let our citizens know how and when and what ways they may see the city utilizing these, what are those official ways. But it's certainly, you know, making sure that the policies try to keep somewhat up with the technologies, which seemingly is always advancing faster than we're able to regulate it.
Okay, thanks.
Mhm.
Nothing else? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, our next presentation is on the homeless outreach program. Mr. City Manager.
Yes, Madam Mayor, members of the council, clearly an issue that I know many of you are contacted by your constituents on a regular basis is issues of homelessness in the community. As we all know, that term homelessness can be very broad in its definition. Tonight, we're going to hear a presentation from Captain Durst that really focuses on one aspect of homelessness and one approach to that. So I just want to reiterate, this is a limited focus to a limited portion of that overall problem, but really trying to start to get our arms around this systemic issue in our society.
Members of the council, Madam Mayor, I'm here to give you a brief overview of our potential, what we call homeless outreach team. Several departments throughout the nation have adopted that term, and like all good cops, we don't take credit for our own. We steal ideas, and so that's why we.
Perfect.
The four objectives of the homeless outreach team will be to, one, identification, which will be identifying potential campsites and those individuals that are living in those sites. Secondly, tracking and recording of contacts with individuals in those campsites, providing services through a coordinated community effort, and last resort would be necessary police action that we would take if it's needed. Identifying the homeless camps will be used or will be completed throughout 5 different areas. One is through patrol, whether it be calls for service or self-initiated activity where the officers will find the camp on their own. Through action center requests, which you're all familiar with, those get sent to us on a daily, weekly basis, and we look at those. Through the UTV and ATVs, which I'm told the ATVs were just ordered, they should be here mid-November, if that's correct, Major. And through the drones that Sergeant Bosch just explained. So through the identification process, we will identify the individuals within the camps through pet checks or checking the camps through the use of the drones, the ATVs, the UTVs. Then we will, through the contacts, we will identify any possible contributing factors for those persons why they're homeless, whether it be economics, through the economy, lost their job, or whatever the case may be, through mental health, which we all know that's a big problem, addressing that. Could be through drug abuse, and or just maybe their individual choice that they choose to be homeless. That's just the way they like to live. Tracking and recording of contacts. Identified camps and individuals will be added to our police database. Everyone in the department has access to it, the M-Drive, which they, once they have contact with an individual or a camp, they can add that information and everyone can see it. And through the community services, we check that on a weekly basis to ensure which campsites or who individuals we need to reach out with and make contact with. The camp information will be forwarded to our analyst unit, and they will produce detailed maps, as you can see on the slide, of where these camps may be, so that everyone in the department can see where they're at. Camps will be visited on a regular basis. Right now, we're working with Community Services League, whether it be on a weekly basis or a bi-weekly basis. We haven't determined that exact time frame yet. And the database will be updated upon completion of the visits on the weekly or bi-weekly basis. As I said before, we'll coordinate with several other entities to do weekly or bi-weekly visits, one being the Community Services League. They've been doing this service for quite some time, and we just kind of latched onto their visits, and we did our first one a week ago Friday. Seemed to go pretty well. If you have any questions on that, Sergeant Smedley can give you further information on that. Also, comprehensive mental health, they send a representative out in case we find individuals that have mental health issues, that they can provide them the proper resources, that they can get the help they need. And also, a representative from Veterans Affairs also accompanies us with, if we find veterans that are homeless, to get them the services that they deserve. Providing services through coordinated community effort. Churches and other volunteer organizations will coordinate and provide tangible resources to the mayor's office for distribution during these weekly or bi-weekly visits, and those are primarily the blessing bags that we talked about. And also, I've been coordinating with the director for the Independence Housing Authority, Mr. Bishop, and I'm having a meeting with him next week. He's working on a federal grant that would provide individuals temporary free housing in one of the housing authority properties. In addition would be job training and drug awareness or prevention if they have a drug problem, and any mental health issues. Provide them all the services for free of charge. After the designated time period, I'm presuming I think it's 6 months, they can choose to stay there at a reduced cost of living to have a permanently place to stay. Necessary police action will be a last resort. Obviously, if we witness any criminal activity or crimes in progress, we'll have to take police action and take them to jail. If they're on public property, if they refuse to leave private property after a designated amount of time, obviously in the parks after hours, we'll have to sign complaints and address that. And lastly, if they're on private property and they've been asked to leave by the property owner, refusing to leave, the property owner can sign a complaint, and/or we're working on establishing MOUs with property owners in the event, and that's primarily in the event if the property owner is out of state and can't respond and sign a complaint. The MOU is a memorandum of understanding where they give us the authority to basically sign trespass complaints against the individuals on their property. And lastly, removal and cleanup of camps. We will coordinate with Public Works Department when those camps have been identified, and we've given the individuals the designated amount of time to vacate, and they haven't. Once the camp is vacated, we'll coordinate with Public Works to have it cleaned up. Any questions?
Okay. I have a couple questions. When you describe camps and the images that you showed, I mean, these are mostly in wooded areas, you know, around our city. What about individuals who are seeking shelter in unoccupied buildings around town? Do you, is that where you would require the MOU from the property owner to allow you to have access to that building?
Or one, to have access. Number two, if they wish to, basically would give us the authority to have the people removed from the property. And if they refuse to leave, then it would give us the authority to sign the trespass complaint. Based on the previously signed MOU, we would have to have that signed first.
Okay. Because I know that there's a lot of activity in just unoccupied buildings.
Right.
I mean, people, houses, commercial buildings, apartment complexes, you know.
The problem
so
we're
on
finding
and
is
so
a lot of
forth.
those properties are owned by individuals that are out of state, and it's just hard to find the contact for the property owner. But once we can do that, and we can either email them or fax them the MOU, and they can sign it, send it back to us. Once we have that signed document, we can take action.
Okay. What about the activity that sits just outside of our city limits? I mean, we know 24 Highway and 435. Yes, my X-ray vision went over that way. Sterling and I-70 is an area that we get a ton of complaints about. I know we've done some agreements regarding the bus stops with Kansas City ATA, but how are we coordinating with primarily Kansas City, Missouri, and Jackson County?
I'm going to defer to Sergeant Smedley. He's been working very closely with Kansas City PD. Give Sergeant Smedley that credit. He's done a lot of work on this, and he's reached out to Kansas City quite a bit, and he could probably speak better on that than I can.
Thanks.
Madam Mayor, as he's walking up, I'll make a few comments on that too. 435 and 24 Highway has become a critical mass over the past, I'd say 2 months. Has always been a problem, but I would say critical mass in the last 2 or 3 months of just the craziness there. I know the mayor and we've reached out to the different entities. I've reached out to the council person who represents that area and have some dialogue and some good working there, but I think it's to the point of there's got to be a joint something to really work on that whole area. And unfortunately, perception is everything. Once you get off 435, people automatically think you're in Independence, even though you've got to go quite a ways to get into Independence. And I'd like to have a big flashing sign that says that someday. But that's kind of the critical mass in that specific area that I'm.
So as part of the plan behind our response to this was, I also reached out to Kansas City, Jackson County, other neighboring Jackson County, Kansas City, Blue Springs, Lee Summit. They all have the same problem, but we are in communication to try to come up with a task force so that when we go out, they can come out. If Jackson County wants to send a deputy with us, Kansas City has a unit, their CIT unit already deals with a lot of their homeless stuff. They go out very much the same way that we're starting to go out. They go out with Truman Behavioral, vets, VA representatives, and they go out and make contact with these people. They've actually been in our city before, making contact with individuals. We will get along, or we will tag along with them, do the same thing. these people are very transient, so they'll go from us to Kansas City and back and forth. The goal, obviously, those areas that we speak of, the rich communities and stuff like that, they are being addressed. As you will see there, especially like Sterling and I-70. I spoke with the Kansas City officer, and he's like, yes, we know it's a problem. We were out there 2 weeks ago, we got it cleaned up. Problem is, 2 days later, they're back. Our hands are tied to some degree with many of this stuff. We can trespass them, we can take them to jail. Problem is, they'll spend 3 days in jail, and then they'll come back out, and they'll go right back to where they're at. So, ultimate long-term goal is we need to figure out a way to stop that cycle. There's not going to be a quick fix for this, and we realize that. Our hopes is just to get out, communicate with them, let them know that there are resources available, get them in contact with these resources, and then just stay in contact with these people. And that's where the repeated visits, even it means we have to take them to jail a couple times, but again, hammering home, there are resources available. Let's get you off of the streets, either back in contact with family, into some type of housing, addressing the stuff that we can from our side, be it with Public Works or with MoDOT, either adding extra fencing, trespassing signs, whatever it is, whatever we can do on our end to address eliminating that as an option. Obviously, a lot of this comes back with these people like 435 and I-70. They're always asking for money and stuff like that. That's a process that we can't fix because of certain lawsuits that are going on that many of you guys are already aware of. So again, it just goes back to taking baby steps. And I've fielded phone calls from citizens about I-70, 435 Rapid Right, and people think, they're like, well, and it's not. It's 10 feet from us, but there's nothing that we can do other than, I can tell you that Kansas City is trying to address it the same way we are. And we will jump on board with them and do the same thing. It's just gonna be a process that's gonna take time. And as you guys all understand, this isn't just us, this is the community. People have to understand we're gonna take our steps, but we have to have their support.
Definitely agree. It's for being on the council to delicately, diplomatically discuss Kansas City issues with the Kansas City people is a delicate matter, but our hands are tied, but we can only do what we can try to do and reach out. But it's definitely something that's becoming quite an ordeal over there, just because, lack of a better word, the habitat for them to stay there and thrive is there. And until we are able to have Kansas City take some of their $10 million demolition money and knock down some of the habitat that makes them want to stay there, then our hands are completely tied with that. And the boundaries there are really weird between Independence and Kansas City, and that doesn't help none, because we really don't have a good place to stick a sign that says you're now entering Independence.
Yeah.
So, but thank you for everything you're trying to do there.
Just a piece of information, a couple of things. I had asked the city manager to reach out to his counterpart in Kansas City and get us some data on how many complaints Kansas City is receiving about these areas. Kansas City, as some may know, has a very sophisticated 311 call center that routes citizen complaints. The area at I-70 and Sterling, I think the report we got spanned 3 years. There were 8 complaints. At least one of them was from me. I know 2 more were from my neighbor down the street. So I'm saying that not to say, we just want to take heavy punitive action. I mean, that's certainly not anybody's intention, but the dozens, maybe hundreds of calls that we receive about that area are going to the wrong place. Saying to one of our citizens, don't call me, call somebody else, is never an acceptable answer, ever. but we really, need, the response is not going to be there from 8 calls over 3 years. So, I think that is important for people to know, that they say, we call and we call and we call and we call and no one ever does anything. That's not true. They're not calling. They're not calling into the place that is going to give us the partnership and support that we need to start addressing these issues. So that's very important. Just one more thing, because it was mentioned in your report about what commonly is referred to as blessing bags. My friend Lori Dean Wiley and I are going to try to start a volunteer community effort to assemble these, to make these available to our police department. We're going to begin with our friends, so if you're a friend of mine, expect to hear from me, is assembling these. And this is really to put together, small personal care items. I did not want to ask our police officers to take on one more responsibility, so we're going to be asking the community to help with this. It's going to be organized out of my office, and so we can provide, just items that people might need or desire, clean socks, soap, shampoo, shaving cream, those types of things, to give our officers an opportunity to offer something and kind of break the ice and develop a relationship not only with our homeless populations when needed, but also in other circumstances. So we're going to start this program and see how it goes. I know we are never disappointed when we depend upon the generosity of our community to help us solve these problems. So we're going to try to get that started in November and reach out to some other churches, civic organizations, volunteer groups to help us support our police department in that way. So there'll be more information coming about that. Yes, Councilman.
Well, thank you for the presentation. These are not easily answered situations. I mean, there's no easy answer, and I think you have alluded to the fact that it's a process, and we're going to have to take small steps, and we're going to have to do what we can do with either the numbers of people that are involved, but also the numbers of needs that are out there. I know our church does manna bags. I have 2 in the car right now, so when we stop at a stoplight and there's somebody looking for a handout, I'll just hand them one of those bags, and it's a big Ziploc bag with a lot of things in it. But our children at our congregation put those together, and we probably have 100 on Sunday, and anybody there is free to take as many as they want, and it might be good to have some of those available at City Hall and some other places so that even some of the city staff could have some of those in the car if they needed them. I know that you're working with some of these other groups like Community Services League and Comprehensive Mental Health Services. Are you working with a Ministerial Alliance at all? Have they been willing to come forward? Some of the Ministerial Alliance people or the pastors of some of the churches around town hopefully could become involved and furnish some of those blessing bags or manna bags for use as well. And then I was wondering about Comprehensive. I know they're a separate entity in Independence. We don't have a direct relationship as a city with them, but they furnish for the city mental health services, and they're vital for our city. And I wondered if they were stepping forward to help. I know they have a number of residential care facilities in Independence. They have some short-term ones, and they have some long-term ones, primarily aimed at the mental health community. And they are there, they have the social workers, they have the resources, they have the knowledge. And I think the police department and the city need to lean on them. I mean, they are the resource go-to people that we need help with this group of people. Now, that's not all the people that you have identified here, but the mental health is a substantial portion of that group. And both the Ministerial Alliance, I think, can help on the faith side, on the ministry side, but also we need the professionals and the social workers from Comprehensive to step forward and help us when we call. So, thank you.
Yeah, to answer those two for you, I have not reached out to anybody from any alliance for the churches. But again, this is a community problem, so I will gladly take any assistance that we can get on that. I have been in communication with Comprehensive Mental Health. So they went out with us when we did visits 2 weeks ago, and they absolutely want to help. They may not go out with us on every visit, but my biggest thing with them was if we come across somebody that needs services, I just want to be able to make a phone call and be, hey, can we get somebody in today, tomorrow, next week, and get them into services, or if they already are in services, if they need a ride, get them to the facilities that they need. So they are on board. Again, we're trying to get as many people as we can because
It's a tough job.
a tough job to handle, and it can't just be the police department.
Right.
It has to be everybody in the community. So.
Anything else?
Madam Mayor?
Yes, Councilman.
Captain Durs, are you the point officer for this? This seems like a huge project. Are you the guy that we go to when we get?
Credit, Sergeant Smedley was actually done that.
You're gonna be you're the guy. You're the
Right now,
you're
that's
the,
me.
You're the guy. Okay. Well, there's definitely a lot to put your arms around with this. Is it just you? Do you have any assistance or anything with that? Or are you?
Right now, it's just the baby steps of getting everything together.
Okay.
Right now, we're kind of using the community service officers out of Inglewood. We've reached out to Captain Durst had some SROs that came out with us when we did some visits. So again, much like other things, we pull from other units to try to make things work. Hopefully, in the future, we'll make this part of community service, and it'll be one of our jobs that will go out.
Our future plan is when we fill those 3 spots to rename the unit a community outreach unit, and that'll be one of their main priorities is addressing homeless issues,
Okay.
as well as CIT issues, crime prevention issues.
I would say that this is one of my top 3 complaints, questions, concerns I get from my constituents, and Officer Virgil would, I'm sure he's could echo all that through all the meetings he's been to. It's been one of the major things to address that, and it's a fine border to want to help out reach the truly the homeless who need some, and then now we have a crimes unit that will go with the tweakers who are looking for the flop house. So we got a line there to figure out. Parks, public policy. What is our policy with that, Mr. City Manager? Do we have a zero tolerance for that? Are we able to sweep them out of there once we know that they are located there?
So that is, council member, public property, obviously, and as you saw in the presentation, we'll go there and seek voluntarily relocation if we're able to, but if not, then that's when the measures will get progressively more aggressive. I do want to, as part of that, thank the Independence Civic Council, and Chief Halsey may be able to better speak to this, but they've helped fund and seed the purchase of the ATVs that were mentioned in the presentation tonight so that we can access these remote areas, particularly in some of our public parks and public spaces like that, so that we're able to get back to these folks, see if the services are that voluntarily being provided, or if we have to take the more aggressive measures if necessary.
Okay. Also with that, with MOUs, do we have those already in place? I know the police, the railroad police, they're active, but they're not everywhere at once. They're more thin than you guys, I think. Do we have anything in place to where we can have that set up? And also, second, MoDOT. Do we have to have an MOU for each bridge location, or can we have a blanket MOU for the city and their stuff?
Yeah, Chief Brad Halsey. Yeah, you can have a blanket for properties that they own. We just did a MOU with BP, even though most of that's in Sugar Creek, for example. We're having some issues with ATV illegal riders up in that area. But to get to the point on that, now that we do have some items over at the law department for review to address this bigger issue, what we did is I've talked to the Springfield police chief ask them what they do. And private property owners, they have an agreement signed by both parties. They post the property, they give them 24 hours to vacate. If they don't, then they work with Public Works to come in, or, you know, that's gonna be the bigger picture here we have to figure out is it's expensive when you have these bigger camps. But that's gonna be part of the job of this new officer assigned to Community Services Unit. He or she is gonna have a difficult job because, as you stated, there is no easy answer. There is no real answer. And honestly, the police department is not the answer. This is a society issue that we have to get figured out. Unfortunately, like many other things in this world, we get stuck with doing it and trying to figure out those problems. But, you know, we're doing that within our own community now. We've been dealing with this issue for a number of years, but I think we're going to have a concentrated effort more so now than ever before by having this specific officer assigned, looking into these issues, being a liaison with the business and the residents on problem solving this issue.
So this becomes a budgetary issue, Mr. City Manager. Do we need to start looking within our budget to fund these cleanup sites? Some of these camps are pretty massive, and with the waste and the whatnots that go along with that. Is that something that we need to take a look at? And how are we funding that currently?
There is no dedicated budget for that, Councilman, just to be clear, but I mean, it's certainly something we don't shirk the responsibility of. I mean, if we when we come across these, we'll certainly use our general fund dollars or whatever resources are appropriate to address that. You know, I will say that, you know, we heard about the street crimes unit tonight that required $340,000 of new ongoing funding in order to provide that, and the creativity, kudos to the police department for finding ways to build upon those resources, as you heard tonight. But, you know, continuing to find those new resources, we need to have a conversation with this governing body and with our community about what are those priorities and what are the ways in which we may be willing to pay for those, or other priorities that maybe we could put towards the back burner to do that. The other thing I might add, and building off something the chief said, Councilmember Robertson and I and Councilwoman DeLucy were at Congressman Cleaver's federal legislative briefing on this past Friday, and he actually referenced this and heard this term for the first time, but really describing affordable housing as a crisis in this country. And you know, I think that is a contributing factor to a large degree in this problem. I was very pleased to hear that he's been visiting with Governor Parson to look at bipartisan and multi-agency issues or ways of solving this issue. So there is no easy answer, but I think we have to dedicate ourselves to looking at a multiplicity of options and resources to throw at this problem.
With that, thank you.
Chief, go ahead. No, I'll ask my question.
I'd be remiss if I didn't bring up, you know, internally in the city, Tom Scannell and his staff, Tim Gramlin and his staff, Eric Erfer and his staff. I mean, I feel like there's better communication now than there ever has been. We communicate a lot of those different issues and try to problem solve this. So again, credit to them, because Public Works is really good. If it's a property owned by the city, whatever, they do come in with a cleanup crew to help, you know, on that aspect of it. So anyway, I just want to make sure to give them credit.
How many full-time CIT officers do we have?
Well, we had one.
Yeah.
But that's going to be ending. We originally asked for a 3-year pilot project on that. We got one. It's been very beneficial. Unfortunately, the funding, we are funding it right now on our side. That grant's done.
Right.
So that's going to be part of this dilemma that we're trying to figure out too on the community services. We're adding the one community services unit position internally from changing things around. And as Captain Durst mentioned and Sergeant Smidley is, you know, it's not just homeless issues that we're dealing with on that position, but that could be another aspect of that. How are we going to pick that back up? Because I've said it before, we can certainly use a sergeant in a unit.
Yes. And I don't need an exact number, but about how many of our officers have CIT training?
So Sergeant Smidley can speak to that, but he can probably give you better numbers than I can, but I will tell you, we're a young department. So he is coordinating additional training now to do CIT training. And our philosophy is we don't mandate that training. You have to want to be able to do that kind of work. And it's a 1-week course to get basic CIT training, but you want to speak to that, Amy?
Yeah. So currently we have approximately 90 officers, give or take, maybe closer to 75, just at retirements and such, that are CIT trained. Missouri, or the Mid-America CIT Council offers training 4 times a year. It's a 40-hour basic class on CIT. We have currently 2 officers signed up to go in December, and I was told today we have a couple others that are interested. As the chief said, it's not a mandatory training. I used to be a co-chair on the CIT Council, and that's one of the things, we don't want it to be mandatory training. We want officers that want to go to that training. Because it's different policing. It's not going out and arresting, it's actually going out and trying to solve problems, and it's people with mental health issues, and it takes time. So if you want to go, we take you to the training. As the chief mentioned, we have a younger department, so younger officers in patrol. So I'm pushing that now to get officers back into that training, letting them know how this can help them, because we will deal with somebody with mental health issues on a daily basis. So that training helps out, lets you know how to get somebody from calling the police, 6 times a day to calling their caseworker 1 time a day, and that caseworker taking over and dealing with the issue instead of it being a 911 issue, and those type of things. And then doing the follow-up with those people to make sure that they're staying in services or engaged, or if they're not, how do we get you back into services? So.
Okay, thank you. Anything else? Okay.
If I may.
Thank you. Yes.
You got a rock in a hard place, but a direction you're going, the communication with Kansas City, because a lot of times I'll go down there and pick up stuff myself, and it's in Kansas City along 40 Highway in my district. We're intermingled there so much. We're going to have to be a unit together, and you need help, which we're going to get you. But the other thing is, the training to see where this is and that isn't. I mean, God bless you for going there.
Thanks, sir.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Okay. This takes us to our staff reports. Our first report is the first quarter performance measures update. Mr. City Manager.
Yes, Madam Mayor, members of the council, one of our commitments in Independence for All is regular and routine reporting on our progress in meeting the goals outlined by the council through 60 different performance measures. Won't review all 60 with you tonight, but our Truman Fellow, Kristen Ayers, is here to provide you a brief update through the first quarter of the current fiscal year.
Hi, good evening, Mayor, members of council. Kristen Ayers, your Truman Management Fellow, here, like Zach said, to give you a brief update on the first quarter of the fiscal year for performance measures. So just as a quick reminder how the dashboard is built, the measures are built around the Independence for All strategic plan, which is the 4 goals. So there are specific measures under each goal that come from the different city departments and our community partners. And really the purpose of the measures is to make sure that we're using the right strategies to meet our goals in the plan. So this is the overall view of how we did on our goals this quarter. So this is the first quarter since we started reporting where all 4 goals are green. So in past quarters, quality was usually yellow. So this quarter we got all greens. And really the reason that quality was green this quarter was these are the measures that improved this quarter over previous. I'll explain some of these more in future slides, but most of these have been yellow or red in past quarters. So the first measures I'm going to talk about are those that had changes in their goals. Since this was the start of a new fiscal year and we were a year into our dashboard, we challenged the departments to look at all their measures and make sure that we have the correct goal on them. If they were exceeding every quarter, let's raise that goal. And then make sure that we have all the right measures. So the first thing, we raised all of the communications measures goals because those exceeded every single quarter last year heavily. So Facebook's new goal is now to increase the number of followers by 5% each quarter instead of 3%. Because Instagram saw the greatest growth in followers, that measure's goal is now increased to 20% from 3%. And while Twitter has seen the slowest growth, we still have increased that goal from 1% to 3%. And lastly, Nextdoor's goal has increased from 3% to 5% because of their continued steady growth. Next, we have visitors at historic sites. This goal didn't change, but we changed how we're measuring this now. So previously, we were including attendance figures from all Independence tourist sites. So that included the library, the genealogy center. This year we've decided to only include City of Independence owned sites and added their classes, programs, and rentals into that figure. This was done to better represent the actual functions and operations of city-owned sites. As the past attendance figures, we didn't really have much operational control over how many visitors those sites had. So the goal is that the number of visitors will be 3% higher than the previous fiscal year, and we far surpassed that this quarter with 39,957 visitors at city-owned sites. Yeah.
Sorry, Mayor.
Go ahead.
What's the 15,000? Is that last year's goal or the last year's number?
The 15,000 is the goal for this quarter.
Okay.
And
Gotcha.
so, yeah, we got 39,000.
Gotcha.
Next, we have a new measure. The Community Development Department, now that they have the health inspectors, added this measure, investigation of restaurant complaints. So this new measure is the percentage of restaurant complaints that are investigated by food inspectors within one business day. So the goal is that these complaints will be investigated at least 75% of the time within that one day. And for the first quarter, they passed that goal with 85% of their complaints being investigated in that time frame. And really, this measure is important to ensure the timely investigation of foodborne illness outbreaks. So the next few measures I'm going to talk about are ones whose results changed this quarter over previous quarters. So first we have sanitary sewer system cleaning. This measure has never reached its goal in any previous quarters, but did this quarter. So the goal is to clean 100% of the sewer system over the course of 3 years. Throughout the year, the crew had been short-staffed and had some broken equipment, so that's why they weren't able to reach their goal in any previous quarter. But this quarter, dry weather conditions, a full crew, and all their equipment functioning properly allowed the pressure cleaning crew to make good progress toward their yearly goal. Next, we have records request response time, and while they have exceeded their goal every quarter in the clerk's office, I wanted to highlight them this quarter because of the huge increase in requests they received this quarter. So in the first quarter, they received 145 records requests, which in the entirety of last fiscal year, they only received 274. So that shows how last quarter was huge in information requests. But even with this large amount of requests for information, the clerk's office still exceeded their goal of 5 days by finishing all these requests in 2.25 days. So good customer service there.
Good job, Sarah.
Lastly, I want to highlight the police department response for priority 1 calls. So this quarter, the response time for these calls decreased significantly from 9 minutes last quarter to 5 minutes and 57 seconds this quarter. And there are a few factors that contribute to this decrease, including new call classifications and the implementation of priority dispatching. But since I am not an expert in this, I'm going to have Deputy Chief Jarnigan come up here and address you all on these changes a little further.
Hi, Mayor Weir, members of the council. My name is Ken Jarnigan, Deputy Chief with the Police Department. As all of you know, during the fiscal year, fourth quarter of last year's fiscal year, both the police and fire departments upgraded our computer-aided dispatch, or our CAD system. During that fourth quarter of last year on the police department side, we saw a bit of a spike as far as our response times. We attributed that to our dispatchers being moved to Fire Station 1 to the backup site during this CAD upgrade, and also to them learning the new CAD system. We began July of this year, we began proximity dispatching with the police department. Right off the bat, what we've noticed in comparison to fourth quarter of last fiscal year was a 26% decrease in response times. That's for all calls, not just priority 1 and priority 2. Disclaimer on that is we have to remember fourth quarter we saw a spike. So looking back as far as calls, we have to look at the, go back and compare the third quarter of last year's fiscal year to this first quarter. And doing that, are dispatched by an average of 14.78 minutes to 10.8 minute calls for calls, all calls for service, and priority 1 and 2 calls. I'm sorry, got off pace here. What we're seeing with our proximity dispatching is what we're really seeing the increase in is the time when the call comes into dispatch, they get the necessary information and identify the officers that they're going to see. That's where we're really seeing the significant time decrease in. And that the stats that I just gave you, comparing the fourth quarter of last year to this first quarter of proximity dispatching, for all calls, that was 14.78 minutes to a reduction of 10.81 minutes. Going to priority 1 and 2 calls, it's going from 3.3 minutes during the fourth quarter of last year's fiscal year to 2.43 minutes. The response times that we're seeing as far as officers, like Kristen just indicated, going back again, not counting the fourth quarter of last year's fiscal year, but going to the third quarter. The third quarter we showed a 8.26 minute response time, and then to what Kristen has just indicated, a little over 5 minutes on response time. This is very promising as far as first quarter, but we're cautiously optimistic. It's a new system. Last year, what happened to us during the second quarter of last fiscal year, we had 5 homicides just during that quarter. Some of the calls for service, such as homicides, shooting calls, things of that nature, are very time consuming. They tie officers up. Fewer amount of officers available, obviously the response time drastically increases. The promising point, though, is what we're seeing as far as our dispatchers. It's taking the human element out of it. The computer is aiding them as far as identifying the officers that are available through our automated vehicle location system, or AVL, or mapping system. So they're able to identify officers a lot quicker, who to send on the calls. And we're seeing, again, at this point, definitely a decrease as far as the response times on 1 and 2 calls for service, priority 1s and 2s. Staffing also has a direct effect, obviously. Last year, we were in a little bit better shape at this time this year compared to last year. As you all remember, we got close to 20 vacancies as far as officers. At this point, we're in a hiring process. We're at 2 at this point, as far as 2 openings, 2 vacancies for officers. So in a year's time, we've come a long way in staffing, but that's going to continue to be an issue as our calls for service, unfortunately, are not decreasing, they're increasing. I know it's a brief overview of proximity dispatch and our response times. Any questions from any of you?
Any questions? Thanks.
Okay, thank you.
That ends my presentation as well, so if you have any questions.
Okay. Any comments or questions? Thank you. It's
you.
always great to see. I'm glad, after last quarter, I think things weren't just quite looking right. I mean, so thank you for fixing a few of those things that some of them we don't track every quarter, so it wasn't really reflecting accurately. So I appreciate the work we've done to kind of make that a little bit more clear and provide that accurate information to our citizens. And as always, this is just the tip of the iceberg, the presentation that this council gets. We really encourage citizens to go look at the performance dashboard, dig down. There's a lot of information in there, and really helps us. It doesn't help us, it tells us what we need to be doing to serve this city. So it's very important. Thank you. Anything else? Okay. City boards and commissions, Madam City Clerk.
You all should have a short report from me. On the first page is, we'll talk about that in a second. On the second page is just a list of our vacancies, and I'm pretty proud of this. It looks pretty good, to be honest. So take a look at that. There are some individual council appointments at the bottom. I will be sending out some reminder emails this week to maybe get some names. So first on our agenda, there's been a recommendation has been received to reappoint Lori Halsey, Jason White, and Dr. Terry Morris, and appoint Dr. Matthew Wingert to the Independence Advisory Board of Health. So I'm looking at a direction to adding a resolution.
Is there any objection to adding these 4 recommendations to the next council agenda?
Right.
Second.
That's all I have.
Okay, thank you very much. Are there any other topics any council member wants for discussion this evening? Okay.
I was wanting to see about how our fuel adjustment presentation is coming along.
Yeah, Councilmember Huff, I recall you mentioned that 2 or 3 meetings ago. Staff is continuing to cull and pull that information together. So just for the rest of the public and council's benefit, as a reminder, Councilmember Huff had asked the mechanics of how the fuel cost adjustment is calculated for a customer's bill. So we're working on pulling that information, making sure to have that a very upcoming soon study session.
Thank
you. Mr. City Manager, we had the adoption of the Downtown Redevelopment Coordinating Committee at our last meeting. One of the immediate action steps we were going to take was to begin to assemble an internal working group to start tackling these recommendations. So can you tell me where you are on the staff side? The recommendation does ask for some representation from the council, and if we need to take any action to get that moving.
Yeah, as the mayor's alluded to, the resolution that was adopted last week affirming the committee's report wants to make sure that we don't fall into the same trap that we did 16 times before, which is having inaction on these studies. So I have appointed a couple of our key city staff that the various initiatives would touch, 4 of those to be exact. I would like the council to consider appointing at least 2 of the members of this body to that group so that we can continue to make sure we're staying on task and in the right areas that the council would like to see us moving within the right time frames and in the right areas. So would request council's assistance with identifying 2 members of the body to participate on that working committee.
Okay. What is the desire of the council in making those appointments? I'm not asking for nominations this evening, but
Madam Mayor?
Yes.
I'll open up my services to be one of the point people for the council, if I have no objections from my colleagues.
Okay, very good. Yes, Councilman?
Madam Mayor, as serving as chairman on the committee, I would also like to volunteer my services in the future.
Very good. Okay, well, if there's no...
Well, if you have a third,
yes,
I'd volunteer too.
Okay. Why don't we discuss this during the week? We'll put a resolution on the next council meeting, kind of firm up how we want to do this. As always, every meeting is open to any council member to attend and participate in, whether or not you're an official member of the committee or not. So we will maybe put together a description of what the tasks of the committee is, when and how often that they'll meet, and get a resolution on for the next council meeting.
Perfect. Thank you.
That help? Okay. Anything else? Nothing. All right. We are adjourned.